Good evening to everyone. On behalf of Sri Aurobindo Society, Chennai branch, I welcome all the devotees who have joined us in our Saturday Satsang. Today we have with us Sri Srinivas Mulugu. He is a chairman, Andhra Pradesh and Telengana State Committee of Sri Aurobindo Society, and he is also a core committee member of Sri Aurobindo Society, and he has been associating with Sri Aurobindo Society over almost 2 decades, and he is well versed in the teachings of the mother and Sri Aurobindo, and he had run many youth camps both in Hyderabad and in Pondicherry and in Delhi in collaboration with our Delhi ashram. And he had conducted many workshops, corporate workshops, which incorporated the principles of management propounded by the mother and Sri Aurobindo. And he had the good fortune of being mentored by Sri M.P. Pandit in his youth. So we are very fortunate to have him with us. And he is going to speak on Yoga Sutras in Integral Yoga on behalf of Sri Aurobindo Society, Chennai branch, and on behalf of all the devotees who have assembled here. I welcome Sri Srinivas Mulugu ji to this event, and I request him to take over this forum. Over to you, Srinivas ji.
Thank you, Shivakumar ji. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to be a part of the satsangs that you have been conducting for so long. Along with my friend Archana from Hyderabad, I have had the blessing of participating in your satsangs earlier also. Along with our Tamil brothers and sisters today, I would also like to welcome some seniors who have joined us. Vishnu Prasad Goyalji, who has joined us from Noida. He is the chairman of Uttar Pradesh and Uttaranchal. Ravi Khandelwalji, who is based in Rudrapur. And similarly, some friends, Ramachandra Garu and others who have joined from Andhra Pradesh and Telengana region. I welcome you all for the satsang. Topic is Yoga Sutras in Integral Yoga. Many of us have faced one challenge when we are asked the question by newcomers, can you tell us a little bit about Integral Yoga? We start very enthusiastically, but very soon find that there are so many things to say and so many things to talk about that in half an hour we barely feel like, that metaphor where maybe we have explained the tail of the elephant, but the elephant is still remaining. There are so many things in Integral Yoga, so many aspects to Integral Yoga. The very fact that it is integral, the very fact that Sri Aurobindo says all life is yoga, make it difficult for us to explain all the important themes in one place, or even sequentialize it, or explain it in a way that it makes sense. faced with this difficulty over many years, I made some attempts as I was doing workshops across the country to bring together the key elements of integral yoga, which we could communicate, so that at least in 1 hour's time, we feel like we have covered at least 70-80% of what integral yoga is. At least it gives a good idea of what integral yoga is. This is the background. Also, in today's talk, 2 things I can say right at the beginning is, as we progress in the talk, we will be using more and more of Sri Aurobindo's English terminology. So that is something that is important I wanted to mention. The other thing is, there are 12 themes we will be touching upon, 12 items today in this talk of 12 Yoga Sutras. Each Yoga Sutra is very deep, and if I may say, one can speak for half an hour to 1 hour only on that one subject. So it is assumed that we have some familiarity of these topics, and later on perhaps Shivkumarji can take up each of these themes, and 1 hour talk can be arranged in these 12 themes, because that will give a comprehensive coverage to the subject material. But it is a humble attempt that we have made to try and bring together important themes of integral yoga. I will also share the list of these themes towards the end of my talk in the chat box, so that all of you can have these 12 themes with you. Regarding these Yoga Sutras, benefit of knowing them also is that once you know these Yoga Sutras, whichever book of Sri Aurobindo and Mother you take up, the same themes will repeat under different subjects. So it becomes easy to understand the writings of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Also, understanding one Yoga Sutra allows us to understand later on some other Yoga Sutras more easily. This is another benefit. Sometimes the Yoga Sutras can be jointly understood so that we can go deeper into a subject matter. I will give you examples of this. So in a way, this talk is like knowing the ABCD alphabet. And once we go through ABCD alphabet of integral yoga, we will know the rest of the discussion as and when it comes. So the first Yoga Sutra we can begin with is Ascent and Descent, what Sri Aurobindo says. When he speaks of ascent and descent, what Sri Aurobindo means is that in the human journey, we know the ascent part very easily. All of us aspire to something higher, something greater, something better. There is an inherent seed of light that is trying to rise higher, from the stone to the plant, to the monkey, to the man, and even man striving for perfection are examples of these things. This is the ascent part. But then when somebody asks, why is there an ascent? What is the reason? Sri Aurobindo explains that the reason that man continuously tries to exceed himself is because the seed of the divine light has come down from above and embedded itself in matter. So first there was a descent, that the divine came down, Leela, for his Ananda. There are many explanations. And that seed of light is seeking to rediscover itself. And in that process, there is the ascent. So there is the ascent, there is the descent. There is the evolution, there is the involution. And this particular aspect is already familiar to us in a very simple way also. When we pray, what happens? There is a prayer that is the ascent, and there is the response to the prayer that is the descent. Similarly, when there is a yajna, there is an ahuti that is given and an invocation that is made, and the yajna phala is the descent. So one can see it in many ways. Man consciously attempts this ascent of consciousness, this ascent of going beyond himself. That is what becomes yoga. And in Sri Aurobindo's path, very interestingly, it is said that while we make an effort to make progress, it is actually the divine grace that descends and elevates us that really helps in fulfilling the yoga. The higher has to descend, and the man has to ascend through purification and preparation of his own nature. So there is the arohana, avarohana, the ascent and the descent. Also, Sri Aurobindo points out that there is a double evolution that is at play. The individual soul is trying to evolve, and the whole earth as a species, men, are also evolving. So there is a double evolution in this ascension. So this is the concept of ascent and descent at a very high level. It gives us an idea that we seek the divine because there is a spark of the divine inside of our heart already. And of course, we will come to more of that spark of the heart when we touch upon the Yoga Sutra that is coming up on psychic being. Another aspect of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, another important sutra or framework, is what Sri Aurobindo calls matter and spirit. Or in the traditional literature, it is called form and formless also, sakara, nirakara. Sakar, nirakar. We live in a world of matter. When Shivakumarji thinks of Srinivas, he thinks of somebody with a certain hair and certain face and certain body structure. When I think of myself, I identify with this body structure. But this is the transient form, nama and rupa, the name and form that we identify with. And the reality that most of us live in is actually the reality of the body and the associations with the body. But all of our Sanatana Dharma talks about the truth being the Atman, the spirit. So Sri Aurobindo takes these two, matter and spirit, and he speaks about it again and again. The journey of yoga is to move from identification with matter to the realization of the spirit, to move from form to formless. We move from the surface level consciousness to the depth of our being. In Savitri, there is the famous line, "The spirit shall look out through matter's gaze, and the matter shall reveal the spirit's face." The spirit shall look out through matter's gaze. What does it mean? Essentially, the soul, for its evolution, needs to experience and interact with this world, and through those experiences, it grows. So it is the spirit inside that uses the 5 indriyas and grows. It is that spirit that is looking out through this eye, and by extension, hearing, touching, tasting, everything. This is how we grow. This is how the matter gradually helps the soul to develop inside. And the matter shall reveal the spirit's face. Everything that is embodied around us represents a force of evolution that exists inside of us. So when I look at the other person, I may see the matter, but also I should recognize there is a soul within the other person. And when I recognize that, I am able to see that soul in this matter. They say, no, the eyes are the lamps of the soul. So in that context, even Mother, when she guided sadhaks, she told them, when you interact and there is a set of circumstances, don't only look at people, look at the forces behind the people. Once there was a sadhika who was assisting Mother, and she was there for many years around the Mother. And when one reads the chronicles of the ashram, there is an interesting discussion Now, this person was supposed to be mother's attendant, but she was also troubling mother a lot, causing difficulties for mother, getting a little bit annoyed, these kind of things. Annoyed with the mother, by the way. I mean, I guess such things also happen. So some other sadhaks who noticed it for a long time eventually asked the mother, Mother, why don't you send this person to some other department? There are hundreds who would want to come and serve you. Mother's response was very interesting. She said, if I replace her, the force will catch hold of the other person. So mother was seeing the force that was acting through this sadhika around her and working on her transformation. Even for us, when we face with difficulties, very often we get caught up in the person's, oh, he did like that, he did like that. But somewhere we also have to learn as spiritual seekers to see what are the forces that are at work and how do we approach those forces. Perhaps anger through peace, perhaps argument through harmony. We have to learn. It is a process for all of us. So this matter and spirit part is very important in Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga. And this theme is there again and again. Now, some of the frameworks that are there in Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, some of these yoga sutras also have come from the traditional background, from our Vedantic literature, from our Sanatana Dharma literature. One such yoga sutra is about guna, sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna. We all know broadly what they are, but there is one difficulty. Please don't mind me saying it. I'm sharing it among our own friends as seekers and sadhaks who are trying to make spiritual growth. Sometimes we confuse familiarity with realization. If somebody says sattva guna, rajo guna, oh, I know sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna. But knowing the words does not mean we have overcome the gunas. We have to learn to not make this confusion. Familiarity does not equal realization. Even with familiarity, we have to do a lot of sadhana and remind ourselves. Now, two things Sri Aurobindo repeatedly says is that each of us has all the three gunas to different extents. All of us have Rajoguna, Tamoguna, and Sattva-guna. Also, which is the dominant guna? It keeps changing. Sometimes it changes during the day. When in the morning after our bath and puja, we have more of Sattva-guna. By 3 o'clock, when we are in the middle of our work environment or interacting with a lot of people, we have a Rajoguna. And when we come back from work very tired at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, there is a certain complete deflation and lethargy and probably a dominance of tamoguna, tiredness, laziness, all of that. We will also read one line about each of these. These are Sri Aurobindo's words. Sattva guna, the turn of nature that is full of light and poise, directed to good, to knowledge, to delight and beauty, to happiness, right understanding, right equilibrium. So these are the characteristics of Sattva-guna. Is always a certain element of light-heartedness, certain element of joy, buoyancy, a certain element of harmony, a certain equilibrium of things, fine enlightenment, a certain moderation in speech, a certain moderation in temper. All of these, we know such people in life. So this is Sattva-guna. Rajoguna is the way of passion and action and thirst of desire. This is action with expectation. There is a kinetic force, energy, activity, power, and it is quite dynamic. When you see people, sometimes some of us, we know, we've seen people, when they sit in the chair also, they're constantly moving their feet. When the biggest punishment to some people is to make them sit in a chair for 15 minutes without doing anything. The energy needs to keep moving, it pushes us. So somewhere we have to understand the desire comes from there, anger comes from there, the instability comes from there, all of that. And similarly, tamoguna. Tamas is a way of darkness. It is a way of laziness. It is a way of, it prevents light from entering us. And it takes away the power to respond. There are many definitions that Sri Aurobindo's literature encapsulates. I'm just giving an idea because you're already familiar with it. Particularly when one reads essays on the Gita, it is very important to observe how many different places there is a reference to the gunas. I found that practically every other chapter refers to the gunas. And also, Sri Aurobindo very beautifully describes how many different aspects of our experience of life are covered in these gunas. Sri Aurobindo says action can be sattva, rajo, tamo guna. Knowledge can be sattva, rajo, tamo guna. Reasoning and will can be sattva, rajo, tamo guna. Ego can be sattvic ego, rajasic ego, tamasic ego. Speech can be sattvic, rajasic, tamasic. Even experience of time can be sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic. So these gunas are embedded in us. And when one reads particularly Yoga of Self-Perfection section of Synthesis of Yoga, Sri Aurobindo talks about two things. Now we know Rajoguna is full of likes and dislikes. Sri Aurobindo says it is important that we overcome this. Dvandva tita. Dvandva is duality. Duality is Rajoguna, full of Rajoguna. So Sri Aurobindo says you have to overcome duality. And then on the gunas, you have to overcome all the three gunas, even the sattva guna. So as a sadhak, our journey should be first to move from rajas and tamas towards sattva and eventually move beyond sattva. Also, another classical example that is given is each of these is a chain. Tamoguna is an iron chain. Sattva, Rajoguna is a silver chain. Tamoguna, Sattva Guna, even though it is good, it is a golden chain. All the three have to be transcended. In one of the ways of looking at it is these are the chains that bind the soul to the body. Sattva Guna binds it in one way, Rajoguna binds it in another way, Tamoguna binds it in another way. So we have to first move towards Sattva Guna and eventually transcend Sattva Guna. So that is the Triguna framework or Yoga Sutra. Another Yoga Sutra for integral yoga is the combination that Sri Aurobindo describes us as comprising it physical, vital, and mental, or matter, life, and mind. He uses these three words again and again in many, many places. And to understand Sri Aurobindo, it is important that we know what this physical, vital, and mental is. The first thing we need to understand is that when we look at ourselves, most of us think of ourselves as a combination of thoughts, emotions, and body. And we don't know the demarcation lines. When is the body dominating? When is the emotion dominating? When is the mind dominating? When we get angry, our thoughts also are about anger. Our body also is shivering with anger. Our emotions also. So we think I'm angry, but we don't make the distinction of the physical, emotional, and mental. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, this is one of the most basic and fundamental distinctions to know that when something happens inside of me, where is its source? Is the source in the physical? Is the source in the vital, or is the source in the mental? The reason for the confusion for most of us is wherever the source is, it affects all the three. For example, when I fall sick and my body has temperature, my body is also down, my emotions are also down, my mind is also down. So we think, okay, I'm sick. We think we are one composite personality. We are angry. All the three are agitated. But it is not like that. Anger has a seed in the vital being and that pulls the mind and the body. Illness had a seed in the physical body that pulls down the vital and the mental. Particularly for children who are in the age of 15 to 20 or 22, if we help them understand that to really know how to control yourself, first you learn to differentiate between these three parts. What are just thoughts? What are emotions? What are your body consciousness and responses? If we can teach them in the young age, their life will be much better. Because first comes observation, then comes detachment, then comes control. If we don't do observation, we cannot go to the other steps. So it is important to understand the distinction between physical, vital, and mental. And most of us spend much of our life trying to clean and purify the vital being. But we don't even know what the vital being is, because vital is full of ego, it is full of desires. If we don't know when something comes up, oh, this is my vital, I should stop it here. If we don't know that, then it will be difficult, because then it will influence the mind, and mind will justify what the ego wants. And body will act upon it. Manasa, vacha, karma, they say. No, that is how it. We have to hold it when it starts at the seed level. Then we don't have to work as hard to control it. We have to deepen our awareness of mental consciousness, vital consciousness, and physical consciousness. Another important thing here to know these is each of them has repetitive pattern. Repetitive pattern. For example, somebody may have a pattern for anger or emotional outburst. Now, every 6 months they need to burst out. First time, it may be because some work-related problem is there, they will burst out, they'll have 2-3 days of misery and they'll come back. 6 months later, it may be a friend who did something wrong. 6 months later, it may be father-in-law or mother-in-law or husband. 6 months later, it is some other financial. But what is common among all of them is emotional outburst has to happen. This person does not have the capacity to hold that energy. So the minute that energy fills up after 6 months, it has to explode. People, particularly the younger generation, the same pattern you see in relationships also. So we have to see what are the patterns that are recurring in our life and which part of our being has those patterns. So this is something we should understand. Another way to understand also is our physical, vital, mental. Each of them can have sattva guna, rajoguna, and tamoguna. In the beginning of the talk, I mentioned how Yoga Sutras can be joined to understand better our own personality. So there can be, we know tamoguna in the body, we know rajoguna in the emotions, we know sattva guna in mental state, meditation maybe. But what is tamoguna in the mental state? What is tamoguna in the mind? Tamoguna in the mind, Sri Aurobindo says, is rigidity, not open to new ideas, always fixed in the same thought process. There is no plasticity. And he writes in the small book, The Mother, unless there is plasticity in your mind, the mother cannot work through you. So like that, we have to carefully see physical, vital, mental, sattva guna, rajoguna, tamoguna. And we have to do an analysis. We do this with youth. And we find that rajoguna in the emotions is one of the biggest areas of difficulty for most of us. So I will not spend more time on it, but you get the idea of how important these Yoga Sutras are if we want to understand carefully our own nature and our own sadhana. Now, my friends, a few months ago, I came to you and spoke to you on psychic being. That is our 5th Yoga Sutra of our day. We talked about how we almost had a 1-hour talk on psychic being. It is a divine spark inside of us. And Sri Aurobindo and Mother say, it is only the psychic being that grows from life to life to life. Not the physical, because we know physical, we live in this world. Not the vital, strong desires only cause problems after death. Mental also dissolves. What is there when I say I'm reborn? What is reborn? Am I going to be reborn like this? No. It is the psychic being that is reborn. And in all the integral yoga, the one primary, most important topic, the most important point for spiritual growth, again and again, one can remember, is the psychic being. All the rest is intellectual capacity and vocabulary. But we have to develop our psychic being if we want to remain close to the mother and if we want to grow. So there is the psychic being is the spark growing into a fire, evolving with the growth of the consciousness. It grows in consciousness by Godward experience, gaining strength with every higher movement in us. So every time we are doing something spiritual, every effort, every sadhana, whatever we are doing, reading Savitri, meditating, doing japa of the mother, going and serving mother wherever we are able to serve in our local centers, and interacting with other sadhaks. These are the movements that help the psychic being develop. I will quickly read some 15-20 words of qualities of psychic being, qualities we should develop so that we awaken our psychic being. I will also put these phrases in the chat box so that you all have it. You don't have to write it down. I will just give me 1 second. I will try to do this. Now I will read it. Aspiration, truth, good. Truth is a very, 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 very fundamental virtue. We all know, but I'm surprised at how many people over 50 also tell lies. I'm sorry, but we should speak honestly, no? I'm surprised at so many people at my age and older than me saying things which are not only lies, but even changing the truth is not permitted. Sri Aurobindo uses the word subterfuge, which means you cannot mislead people also. That is not a psychic quality. So aspiration, truth, good, beauty, faith, joy, happiness, joyful serenity means calm, peaceful, beauty, then light, peace, peaceful, vast, calm. And as we go closer to the psychic being, Mother says, a sense of immortality. As the psychic grows and when we develop these qualities, psychic being comes forward. Sri Aurobindo's yoga is one of the rarest places where Sri Aurobindo and Mother have told two important things. First, how to get in touch with your Atman, Antaratman, that is the psychic being. That is one very important thing. How do we get in touch with it? Mother and Sri Aurobindo have told us. The second thing they have told us is how to make the Antaratman come forward and guide our life. These two things you don't find in any other literature. I have studied many other literatures also a little bit. Nowhere, everybody says there is an Atman, but how to make that Atman come forward and lead our life? Sri Aurobindo and Mother have explained very, very beautifully. So kindly take the time for this also. Another traditional framework is Purusha and Prakriti. This comes from Sankhya Yoga of Kapila Muni. A simple example by which to understand Purusha and Prakriti. First of all, Prakriti, what is Prakriti? All our energy, the universal energy that is flowing through us and making us do things, Prakriti. Eating, sleeping, being aware of our surroundings, all the 5 indriyas, all of this is Prakriti. The endless thoughts in my mind, Prakriti. Lower Prakriti is mechanical and repetitive, endless thoughts, Prakriti. I breathe automatically, Prakriti. In fact, Sri Aurobindo goes to such an extent, he says, when a man is sleeping, He is no different as far as the universe is concerned when you compare him to a tree. A tree. What does a tree do? A tree also takes some oxygen, gives out carbon dioxide. Man also is sleeping, he is taking in oxygen, giving out carbon dioxide. And the body is processing the energy. The tree also is processing the energy. No difference. It is all universal Prakriti. Now, what is Purusha? Purusha is the witness consciousness, Sakshi Purusha. Now, the example one can also see is, imagine two people. One person is blind, but he can walk. The other person, he doesn't have functioning legs. He cannot walk, but he can see. So the blind person who can walk is the Prakriti. It has a lot of energy, but it doesn't have direction. At least for spiritual people, it doesn't have a higher direction. It always has a lower direction. The other person who cannot walk, but who can see is Purusha. He can give guidance. He can tell us where to go, but he cannot act in the world. He has to take the help of Prakriti. This is where, when we talked about three things, observation, detachment, and control, Prakriti we have to learn to observe. Sattva guna, Rajo guna, Tamo guna, all Prakriti. Once we observe, we should say, I am not this Prakriti. I am the witness. So we detach ourselves from that anger, from that jealousy, from that movement. And once we detach, we get a better sense of control. So observation, detachment, control. Sri Aurobindo gives this formula in Synthesis of Yoga. And then he talks about how the Prakriti dominates the Purusha right now. Later on, the Purusha should start controlling the Prakriti from a level of higher consciousness. So this is the witness state, the knower, the observer, the awareness. When Ramana Maharshi says, who am I? When Ramana Maharshi says, who am I? He is asking us to shut down Prakriti for some time and go inside and discover the Purusha. I am Sakshi Purusha. That is how we grow. Initially, it will be just cultivating the Purusha poise, initially just as a silent witness or observer, helps us detach from the movements of the Prakriti. We no longer get carried away. We gradually begin to control. So this is how the framework of Purusha and Prakriti works. Another important Yoga Sutra of Sri Aurobindo's Yoga, all of you already know these terms. I know it also. You all have read this. You have been studying Life Divine with Shivakumarji. So you know most of these things. I am only bringing them all together in one place. One of the important themes of integral yoga is aspiration, rejection, and surrender. Once we see Prakriti at work and once we have the Purusha, what is the job of us when we are trying to do spiritual growth? There has to be a strong aspiration, the search for the divine, and a list of do's, what to do. How should we work on the aspiration? And it has to be a constant aspiration. It is not a one-time aspiration. Every day, it has to be rekindled, the aspiration. Sri Aurobindo says, an aspiration vigilant. You have to be careful that the aspiration doesn't get drowned by the vital energies. It has to be constant. It has to be unceasing. And then he talks about how should the aspiration be in physical, vital, and mental. The mind's will, the heart's seeking, the ascent of the vital being, and the will to open and make plastic the physical consciousness and nature. So he says, aspiration in physical, aspiration in vital, aspiration in mental. These sutras are all interrelated. So just as he gives the do's, there is the don't also. What should we not do? We should reject that. Rejection is a principal element in this sadhana. It may not succeed at once if there is a strong habit of the past, but if you steadily persist, rejection will succeed. So the do's and the don'ts. And now comes the descent part. This is the ascent part. The aspiration and rejection is the ascent part. The descent part, Sri Aurobindo talks about surrender. Surrender of all one is and has, so that every plane of the consciousness and every movement you surrender to the divine, so that the divine comes and lifts us up. So this is how aspiration, rejection, and surrender are to be taken up in integral yoga. Another important Yoga Sutra, the framework that we all should know, and we should not only know, we should practice. Sri Aurobindo's work, Synthesis of Yoga. We all know, traditionally also, Bhagavad Gita also talks about Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Sri Aurobindo added Yoga of Perfection. So what does this Yoga Sutra say? For sadhaks of integral yoga, this Yoga Sutra means that on a weekly basis, on a regular basis, we have to observe our nature and say, am I bringing a synthesis of Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga into my life? Not just to know, oh, Sri Aurobindo is great, he said synthesis of yoga. We have to make sure that we practice bhakti, that we practice all of these aspects on a weekly basis. I am getting some noise towards my side. If you can kindly mute your microphones, if it will be helpful. Another important Yoga Sutra is individual, universal, and transcendental. I think Baluji, would you please mute your microphone? Thank you. Individual, we all know the individual, the name and form. It is evident to all of us. The universal and the transcendental. Universal refers to the world around us. Not only the animals and plants, but in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, we also look beyond the universal form. And Sri Aurobindo says at the universal level also, there is physical, vital, and mental. The animals, plants, rivers, and mountains is the physical part. But there are universally vital worlds also. Emotions are floating through the world. Anger is floating in the world. Lust is floating in the world. Jealousy is floating in the world. We tune to that frequency, it will enter us. This is the universal aspect. We have to understand, we are not a tight, sealed envelope. Everything goes from us in the world. Our frequency has to be fine-tuned. Once, there was a sadhika who was with mother. In the small book, The Mother, chapter 6, Sri Aurobindo refers to the mother as individual, universal, and transcendental. So this sadhika asked mother, Mother, I know you. I am coming to you every day. I am serving you. I know who you are, the individual. But who is the universal mother? I don't understand it. It is written that mother moved 3 steps forward, and where she was standing before, there was a column of white light. It was the universal Mahashakti that was there. Similarly, when Kapali Shastriya used to see the mother on the terrace, he used to see a column of light, column of white light. There is even a small book that came out many years ago called Flame of White Light. As Kapali Shastriya saw, many mothers' pictures were there, but he called that book of the pictures of the mother called Flame of White Light. So there is the universal energy. But, for example, if we take up Aham Brahmasmi, it is a universal experience. It is experiencing ourselves with the universe, and the energies are moving freely. Then there is by the way, one more thing about universal. Time and space belong to universe. Time and space belong to this universe. Then there is transcendental. Transcendental is beyond the universe. It is beyond time and space. It is very difficult for us to conceive it. In fact, it is almost people who go to that extent, there is a void There is nothing else, is what they say. It is as if you're jumping into a valley which is completely darkness in a way from our point of view, where there is practically no awareness also. It is a merging into the complete transcendental manifestation. In the traditional literature also, there are individual, universal, and transcendental aspects of God. For example, when we read Lalita Tripura Sundari, she is not a universal God. She is a goddess belonging to the transcendental plane. It is said that Indra and other gods make a hole in this Brahmanda. What is Brahmanda? Universe. They make a hole in this Brahmanda and go beyond this Brahmanda to the mother, because only a Shakti that comes from beyond this Brahmanda can kill Bhandasura. So even in our traditional literature, the understanding of individual, universal, and transcendental is given. Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, they belong to the universal sphere. Okay, so there are other examples also. But one can, from a sadhana point of view, there is a sadhana of all the three dimensions. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, individual sadhana is about deepening towards the psychic being. Universal sadhana is about widening our consciousness, where we accept other people's thoughts, even if they disagree with us. We try to accept other people's ideas and harmonize them and try to expand our consciousness. And transcendental is about heightening. Heightening gets into the higher planes of mind, which we will see next. Gradations of mind. This is another Yoga Sutra. Now, we all know our mind. Our mind is what made man the greatest being in this world. We all know the mind. However, we also know what goes on inside our mind. It is a fish market. We don't control when we think, we don't control when we don't think. That is not good for anyone who wants to be a spiritual seeker. So Sri Aurobindo talked about how man can move from his chaotic mind to higher levels of awareness, mental awareness. First step beyond our current chaotic mind is a silent mind. A state where there is relative calmness and silence, and just we see, but it doesn't disturb our mind. Right now, our situation is we are in the sleeping state. The minute we open our eyes, our mind engine starts. But here, even if we open our eyes, the engine doesn't start. You silently see as a spectator. You don't let the outside start the machine. This is the very baby step of going beyond the mind. Then Sri Aurobindo describes higher mind. Our first decisive step out of our human intelligence is an ascent into higher mind, a mind no longer of mingled light and obscurity or half light, but a large clarity of the spirit. MP Panditji, he says, our normal mind, we see the world with a torchlight at night. Imagine you are in a dark place and you're trying to walk. In our normal mind, it is like using a torchlight. MP Panditji says higher mind is like there is sunlight. Suddenly you can see the whole thing. A psychic control and a spiritual change should be worked out to bring the higher mind to work upon ourselves. That is what MP Panditji says. So for higher mind to manifest in us and for us to open into the higher mind status, some psychic awareness and control of the physical, vital, and mental is necessary. We should choose what we do and what we don't do. We should control what is not healthy for our spiritual development. Then many of you know the rest of the terms. I will not spend time upon it because Right now, if I try to describe illumined mind, intuitive mind, overmind, supermind, it is like one blind man trying to explain to another blind man how beautiful the flower is. It is not going to be useful. You also have access to this literature. I also have access to this literature. Many of us are not in this state of consciousness. So I will not dwell upon it, but the Yoga Sutra that we talk about here, Gradations of Mind, deals with the vertical ascension out of the human mind. How do we talk about the planes between where we are and the Sat, Chit and Ananda? Sri Aurobindo has given detailed steps, stairs. I might even say they are stairs. One stair after the other, the silent mind, the higher mind, the illumined mind, intuitive mind, overmind, supermind. So, you know the words. All we have to do is, just one thing I will tell you on this Yoga Sutra. As sadhaks of integral yoga, we should ask ourselves, am I working on my mind? Or have I given up? Am I working on at least silencing my mind? If not, how do I work on silencing my mind? If we are not doing it, then we are not doing the sadhana of integral yoga, because this is an important direction. So, this is how the gradations of the mind are. Again, another Yoga Sutra, this is the 11th one we are touching, which again you're all familiar with. The 4 powers: knowledge, strength, harmony, and perfection. Sri Aurobindo says all of us have all the 4 powers. We have to see how to develop them in a balanced way. And we have to understand them correctly. An angry person should not say, I have the power of Mahakali inside of me. No, that is actually very convenient, but it is not true. Where there is ego, it is not Mahakali, but it is simply the ego that is manifesting. We have to understand these 4 powers. And please note that these 4 powers Sri Aurobindo describes in many places. He describes it in the small book, The Mother, where he touches upon the mother herself. He describes it in the social philosophy of Sri Aurobindo about humanity going through phases of knowledge, strength, harmony, and perfection. So we need to understand it correctly. He talks about the Varna system in India, and he says Brahmin representing knowledge, Kshatriya representing strength, Vaishya representing the interchange and harmony, and Shudra representing service and perfection, and that all of us have to embody all the 4 powers. We have to examine and again work on developing what is deficient. For example, if harmony is deficient inside of me, it doesn't matter how much knowledge I have. It is stale and irrelevant knowledge. If I have too much of strength, but I don't have harmony, what is the use? If I don't have the capacity to work on my nature into perfection, everything that I touch. Another thing that I also share with my friends, wherever we go to satsangs, is if you have children who are again in the age group of 15 to 25, I have done this myself, and I have also shared it with my friends. Their children also do it. I tell my friends and their children, every day read 1 power. Maheshwari 1 day, Mahakali 1 day, Mahalakshmi 1 day, Mahasaraswati 1 day. Again start Maheshwari, Mahakali. And I asked my friend's daughter, Amma, you've started? Yes, uncle, I've started. How long does it take to read the 1 power? 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So before going in the morning to my job, I'm reading it, uncle. It's very easy. It's not a problem. Because these 4 powers, the small book, The Mother, is mantric in nature. It changes what is inside and brings the powers of the Divine Mother into us. This is something I have learned from experience and seen that this book is very mantric. Kindly take advantage of it and have our own children and our families benefit from it. The last one, the 12th Yoga Sutra, touches upon the Triple transformation. Again, you would have heard the words triple transformation. We talk about three things: the psychic transformation, opening of the psychic being, which comes forward and governs the mind, life, and body, turning it all towards the divine. This, as I have mentioned to you earlier when I was touching upon the psychic being Yoga Sutra also, the first and fundamental practice that we can do is the awakening of the psychic being. In fact, I would probably say, there are three basic building blocks with which all of us can start, and we should start. One, working on psychic being. A little bit of meditation every day in the heart center, learning more about psychic being, reading books, trying to cultivate more of the psychic being, all of this. The second, Sri Aurobindo says in Letters on Yoga Part 2, the foundation of sadhana is based on a certain peace inside of our being that has to be established. No matter whom we are interacting with, we should be peaceful inside. No matter how difficult the outer circumstances, we have to learn to connect to the mother and be peaceful inside. Establishing peace is very, very important for anything else. So one, psychic being; two, establishing peace inside of ourselves; and third, helping a little bit of silence of the mind, working on reducing the pace of thoughts and being a little silent. These three can serve as very good foundation for all of us when we begin the yoga. So coming back to the triple transformation, the idea is that the psychic being should tell us what is right and what is wrong and control the physical, vital, and mental. The psychic being should become the charioteer. It should become the Sri Krishna holding the horses. Then spiritual transformation. The psychic is over. Now comes the spiritual transformation. Spiritual transformation is about gradual expansion, widening. And we are trying to make sure that we expand our mind, we expand our emotions, we expand our own psychology to embrace a wider and wider existence. Animals also are a part of our consciousness. Trees also. There is a beautiful story. I'll just take 2 minutes. Once, Divine Life Society, Swami Shivananda, he used to give lectures in the evening, particularly to his own disciples. So one day, whatever, at 5 o'clock or something, he was about to start the session, and he found one of the senior monks was missing. So he asked others, what happened? Where is the senior monk? He said, sir, what to tell you? We were all coming. He saw a little puppy that had hurt his foot. So he has taken his puppy and gone to the room. See how it is. And Swami Shivananda was very happy. Similarly, Tapovan Maharaj, the guru of Swami Chinmayananda, they're all monks who stays in Himalaya. So one day he had gone to the bath in the morning at 5 o'clock or something, and then he was coming to his cave. He saw one thief take a blanket and run out of the cave. Now what he noticed was the thief was taking the old blanket. He had a new one which was going to keep more warm. So he took the new blanket and started running behind the thief to give him the new blanket. This is how universal consciousness helps us become one with humanity. There is no more the distinction of me and the other. The spiritual transformation helps us realize the cosmic self. These are words of Sri Aurobindo. The concentration above the head, coupled with the aspiration, initiates contact with the central being which is located above the head and starts the ascent and descent. And one rises above the mind and governs everything from above. All about spiritual transformation. And the last, of course, is supramental transformation, which is we go through these layers of the mind and we reach a state where we ascend to the supermind. And also, we work on going to the higher levels, and most importantly, particularly with supermind, Mother and Sri Aurobindo have emphasized you cannot put a ladder and go to supermind. You have to purify yourself here so that supermind comes down. And right now, supermind is already in the earth atmosphere. If we prepare ourselves, it will enter us. It is waiting for suitable channels to express itself. Unfortunately, our purification is not there. That is why we don't experience it. But if we have purification, then what happens at supramental transformation is all aspects of division and ignorance of consciousness at the vital and mental plane, they would be overcome. It will be replaced with a unity of consciousness at every plane, and even the physical body would be transformed. So in a way, these are the 12 frameworks of integral yoga. All life is yoga, Sri Aurobindo says. So you can imagine why he says that, because in these 12 Yoga Sutras, we have probably not left out anything. We have covered the man, the jiva. We have covered the jantu, the jagat, the entire universe, and of course the Jagadishwara, the God. All of them have been covered in a comprehensive way and brought together in integral yoga. So I think we have tried to touch upon all the important themes of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga. I will also paste this list in the chat box so that you can also keep them with you. And as I said earlier, probably at some point when time permits and the occasion comes, Shivkumarji can see over a period of a year or so, he can cover all of these 12 aspects, 1 hour each or more than 1 hour each, because some of them, like triple transformation, that alone can go on for 3 hours, because each of those transformations is so detailed. So that is what I wanted to share with you, my dear friends. And thank you to Shivakumarji for the opportunity. And if anyone wishes to share anything or ask questions, we have time. Please go ahead, Ashokanji.
Sir, very, very heartening to listen to you such a wonderful speech. It's not a speech, I should say. So, a sort of practical guidance. And a continuous session like our Life Divine Study session. I think your talk should be in a series of sessions. It covers the whole gamut. What to say? And again, now I want to just raise a trivial point, perhaps. You were speaking about the experiences in the Shivananda's and the Chinmayananda's ashrams. I couldn't get that point of Shivananda's reaction to that monks dealing with this puppy. Can you just repeat it, sir? How you related it?
What happened when these monks were coming to their guru was that there was a puppy that was hurt and that was mourning. So what one of the senior monks, who later on became the head of Shivananda Ashram also, what he decided was that at that moment, that particular being, that particular little helpless puppy needed more succor. And he felt that that was his duty. His dharma was to cater to that jiva at that point in time, not to go to a satsang to his guru. It was more to take care of the being that had come to him.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. I get it now. Thank you. Thank you. So, again, I will
Thank
say,
you, Srinivas.
you are telling me it's a very sterling talk, sir. It's a very sterling talk.
Srinivas, I would like to
Yes,
know
Vishnaji.
this Purusha and Gnostic Purusha. What's the difference?
The term Purusha is actually one word, but there are many, many layers to it also. At many levels of consciousness, one can have the Sakshi Purusha Bhava. So there are many ranges we talked about. At each range, there is a different interplay of Purusha and Prakriti. So for example, if we look at the traditional literature also, there is Annamaya Kosha, the physical existence, and there is an Annamaya Purusha. Pranamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Purusha,
Pranamaya Purusha.
Manomaya, similarly. So at every level of consciousness, one can bear that witness attitude of not becoming, but just being. So it is that poise of consciousness of being, and this duality plays throughout. At many, even right up to the Gnostic level. So what is Purusha and Prakriti in ignorance becomes Ishvara and Shakti at the realized state.
So Gnostic Purusha is at a higher level. Isn't it?
At that level, at the Gnostic plane.
Thank you very much.
Srinivas ji, Vishnu Goyal, I please give me more detail what is psychic. It is having so many meanings, but I want to hear again. But really psychic is.
Sir, I will just spend a little time, about 5 minutes on it, and I will touch upon the details relating to psychic being, and then we can get some
brief.
more.
You just tell me brief. I will read it and give me some reading content, so I will read it carefully.
Certainly. So, in many literature, in many paths, we have reference to Atma. We know that. All of us who are Sanatanis know Atma. And we also know that the goal of life is Atma Sakshatkar. The question then is, how do we get in touch with this Atma and how do we help that Atma manifest in our life? This is an area where Sri Aurobindo and Mother have given a lot of guidance. They use the term psychic being for Antaratma. There are subtle distinctions, but we won't go into that because there is, it gets more confusing. But for a beginning, what we can understand is so, for example, a question comes: Agar Atma Paramatma ka roop hai, if the Atma is a reflection of Paramatma, why does it have to grow? Because you're already God, why do you need to grow? But that is where the explanation of Mother and Sri Aurobindo helps us. They say that there is a spark of God in each of us. But that spark of God is covered by a lot of clouds. What are those clouds? The clouds belonging to our emotions, the clouds belonging to the Shadripu, Kama, Krodha, Mada, Moha, Lobha, Matsarya, the clouds belonging to the restless mind. So the light can come out only if these clouds dissolve. And as the clouds dissolve, the brightness also increases. The psychic spark becomes a psychic being. It becomes bright. So, for example, when Pranabda was there, he was there as Mother's assistant for decades. When somebody talked to the Mother about psychic being, it was very interesting. She said, Pranab's psychic being is actually bigger than his physical body. Can you not see? So for us, it is a tiny spark, but people who do sadhana, the light, then the intensity of the glow becomes so much that Mother was able to physically see it as of a different size and growth. I will share with you something else also, more than the theoretical part. As the psychic comes forward, sir, a certain gentleness comes into all our being, a certain love, a certain openness, a certain generosity, एक शांत स्वभाव, एक spontaneous knowledge, एक spontaneous peace. as the psychic comes forward, we become like a saint. आप ये समझिए, एक संत की तरह हम बनते जाते हैं. But in that process, we need that constant polishing of the mind, constant cleaning of the vital, constant stabilization of the physical. This takes a little bit of time. And you had asked for a reference. A
Right.
beautiful book is, I'm typing it in the chat box. It is called Emergence of the Psychic Being. Emergence of the Psychic Being by A.S. Dalal. The book is not more than 100 pages, but it is an excellent starting book on the work of psychic being for all of us. We have to be really grateful.
By Mr. Dalal.
Dalal. Emergence of the Psychic Being by A.S. Dalal. This is a small book. There is also a bigger book by A.S. Dalal called Psychic Being. That also can be helpful. Both are available at Shabda, sir.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you.
Anything?
Shivkumarji, can I make one clarification?
Why not? Please. Yeah, please.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
So I mentioned one thing, that there are 12 themes and each theme can be taken up for a talk. My suggestion on that point was, those can be taken up over a period of time, not necessarily as one series, and perhaps they should be better taken up by a Tamil speaker who has delved, because then some technical words, when they come, they can be better explained, because I have the language limitation, so I thought I should just clarify that, Shivkumarji.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or clarification? Anybody would like to share? Please.
Please go ahead, Shanmuga Priyaji.
Sir is talking something. Okay. Sir, good evening. Thanks for the speech, sir. Sir mentioned on the Mother book, the small book, the 4 aspects. Can you kindly repeat it, sir? The 4 aspects that on the personal experience, sir mentioned a note, and a girl who used to read before going to the work.
Yes, so in the small book, The Mother, in fact, in general, for many of the sadhaks of integral yoga, my own suggestion has been that one should read that book once every few months, every 2-3 months. It is better to read that book from beginning to end, because that book brings together Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. That small book brings together many important themes of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga. In fact, I would also point to a series of talks by Dr. Ananda Reddy, only on chapter 6. He gave a series of 26 talks. Can you imagine? Just one small chapter towards the end, he gave 26 talks. And when you read those talks, you realize that Sri Aurobindo has packed the details of synthesis and life divine also into this book. That series is called Reflections on the Mother. I'm just typing it in the chat box. Reflections on the Mother, Ananda Reddy. Okay. So you can look it up if some of you are interested. I've also posted the link to that series. There are I listened to 26 talks on the Mother of chapter 6 on that. Very beautiful. So first of all, that importance of that book should be recognized for us. Also, one of the things about that book is the English is very simple English. So that is the importance of the book. It brings together all yogas. It gives a synthesis of yoga and life divine details also in that book, number one. Number two, that book also has a very strong mantric effect. What is mantric effect? So for example, a mantric effect means that when we read about something like aspiration, Sri Aurobindo has described so beautifully, the mind's will, the heart seeking, the ascent of the vital being, and the plasticity of nature. I don't have it today. I may not have it today, but if I keep reading that word or that sentence every day, every week, gradually my nature opens to receive that divine light inside of me. And it makes those things come true inside of me. That is what it means by mantra. When there is the consciousness of Sri Aurobindo and Mother in that book, when we read it, that consciousness gradually sheds the light into us. And our physical, vital, and mental open to the rays of Mother's and Sri Aurobindo's consciousness. So this is how that book is mantric. Now coming to Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati. Maheshwari is the mother's power of vision. She is above the mind. I'm paraphrasing. She is somebody who works at a vaster level. She gives the vision. For us, what is our biggest difficulty in any spiritual path? They say the biggest difficulty is ego. Our ego is tightly cupped. It brings all our personality to ego. Overcoming ego is the basic requirement of any spiritual path. How do we overcome ego? Invoke Maheshwari. She widens our mental being. She widens our consciousness. She opens us to the vast vistas. This is how Maheshwari, when we read that section, gradually she works on opening our consciousness to wideness. Mahakali, our nature is full of difficulties. With our own strength, we cannot overcome these difficulties. And when I say our nature, I don't only mean spiritual seekers. Even children, they have their own difficulties with temperament. We know how difficult it is to raise teenage children. All of these difficulties that they are not able to overcome by themselves. For example, discipline is a common problem. Good habits is a common problem. We tell them, don't worry. Your good habits will form over a period of time. You will fall down, but you will get up. But keep praying to the Mother. She will give you the strength. Which aspect of the Mother gives us the strength? Mahakali. So she gives us the strength. Then Mahalakshmi, harmony. It is not only about money, harmony and beauty. Getting along with other people is the most important requirement to succeed in the long term in life, whether it is career or whether it is relationships. Today, we use different terms in corporate world. We say you have to be a team worker. The team worker is the ability to harmonize, the ability to take contrary viewpoints and not fight with them, but incorporate them in the progress. So this aspect, how do we get? Invoke the grace of Maheshwar or the Mahalakshmi. She comes and she brings many things. Harmony, beauty. Where she presses her feet course miraculous streams of an entrancing Ananda. In fact, that the section on Mahalakshmi, it is, in my opinion, it is not prose, it is actually poetry. Madhura Rasa, if you want to experience, read that Madhurya Rasa is there in Navarasas. If you read Mahalakshmi section, Sri Aurobindo has written it so beautifully. Gradually, when people read it over a period of time, they develop the capacity to harmonize, not only outside, but inside, the harmony between physical, vital, and mental. That also she gives. And then comes Mahasaraswati. Perfection in everything that we do. Perfection with ourselves, our own nature, and perfection in everything that we do. I used to tell the engineers that worked for me, whatever work you do, make sure that when you put your signature on it, it has the highest quality in the world. Only then will you grow in your career. Everything has to be perfect. Yes, no customer will give you enough time. There is always pressure. It's okay. Forget food and sleep for 2 days. But when you put your signature, you should be able to say, nobody in the world can do better than this. Only then you will have value for your signature and your career. Such detailed work, such capacity for patience and perfection is granted by Mahasaraswati. And I often encourage children in families to read one power every day, because then it builds an integrated personality. It gives you, it allows you to expand your consciousness. It gives you the inner strength to go forward. It gives you the capacity for harmony. And most importantly, finally, when you do the work, you do it very, very well. All of these capacities can be developed by reading these 4 sections regularly, and sometimes for months, if not longer than that. Every day, 2-3 minutes, it doesn't take much time. So, Shanmuga Priyaji, that is my long answer to your short question.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for the elaborated explanation. Thank you, sir.
Ramchandra garu, namaste. Prasad garu, Narendra Babu garu are also here from Andhra Pradesh and Telengana. Prasad garu, మీరు mute లో ఉన్నారండి. We are not able to hear you.
Srinivas ji,
Namaskaram అండి.
namaste. Good evening. We are happy to hear your elaborate speech about Yoga Sutras. A small expansion of regarding Patanjali Yoga, Yama Nima, in which point you have touched in your speech, sir? Yama Nima are basic foundations, sir. For any...
So this particular talk, we have titled it Yoga Sutras of Integral Yoga. So what we did was, we took important themes of Sri Aurobindo's Integral Yoga and incorporated them as Yoga Sutras of Integral Yoga. We have not taken up the traditional 10 of them. We have not taken them up as this talk. These are the important sutras for our yoga.
And that is true. Yama Nima also to be covered in our integral yoga in one way or other.
Yes.
In one of the points of the Yoga Sutras.
Yes.
In which Yoga Sutra you incorporated?
I have not covered. I have not incorporated it, but I'll tell you where they belong. For example, Ahimsa Satya Asteya Saucha Santosha Tapaha. Right? In fact, Yoga Sutras, particularly when you take the traditional 10, you can put them a part in aspiration, a part in rejection, because basically they belong to the do's and don'ts category. Saucha Santosha Tapaha Swadhyaya Ishvara Pranidharat Niyamaha. Right? So these all come into our aspirational part. What are the things to be done? And what are the other things? Ahimsa, Satya, all those other things will come into the rejection part.
And one more point I want to bring to you. The Kali aspect is connected with the anger. For the control of anger or compensation of the anger is linked with the power of Kali. But at the same time, the progress and the development of the sadhaka, the power also to be given by the Kali power. And about the control of anger, how it will be correlated with the Kali's aspects, sir?
So this is one of the beautiful things about Sri Aurobindo's Integral Yoga. In this path, many times Sri Aurobindo says that weakness is strength distorted. Weakness is strength distorted. Each value that we find as a difficulty in our nature, Sri Aurobindo places in a higher context. So what about anger? Anger is a representative of Raudra from the divine manifestation. When Raudra becomes entangled with ego and vital, it becomes anger. freed from ego and used for a divine purpose, it becomes Raudra. As far as control is concerned, it is one of the basic requirements for us in both in terms of the rejection part of wanting to control the lower nature, it becomes a part of the lower nature.
Then the balance of Arshad Vargas also come to the hand of Kali.
I don't think Sri Aurobindo has specifically written about the Arishad Vargas and relation to Kali anywhere. He basically points out how to work on our lower nature and evolve it with the help of the divine force. So one can extrapolate depending on how one feels what needs to be overcome in a specific part of the nature.
Thank you, sir. I have taken
Thank
your
you.
precious time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wish to hear more speeches like this in future.
Kind of, yes, sir. Kind of.
Thank you, Srinivas ji. Thank you. I can rather say whatever we have heard is a compendium of integral yoga. You have compressed it in a matter of 1 hour and given us the essence. I can even say it is. We had the fortune of listening to one of the best talks in our satsang. In fact, we are all very privileged, and I really thank the grace of the Divine Mother for being fortunate to hear such inspiring words. You have dealt extensively, but in a very short time, the 12 Yoga Sutras, the ascent and descent, matter and spirit, and then is 3 gunas and how we have to transcend them, and then how to identify our source, whatever happens, the movement in our being, how to identify the source, be it physical, vital, and mental, and how to find out our psychic being, and how to make it develop and lead our entire nature, and how to be aware of this Purusha Prakriti and free the Purusha from the clutches of Prakriti. And Sri Aurobindo's, the 3 pillars of integral yoga, that is aspiration, rejection, and surrender, and how to synthesize all the limbs of yoga, and then how to be aware of the 3 aspects of the divine manifestation: individual, universal, and transcendent. How to be aware of gradations of mind. At least what we have to do is, as sadhaks of integral yoga, to begin with, at least to silence our mind. The least we can do is to silence our mind. If not going towards higher realms of mind, at least to begin with, we have to silence our mind. And the 4 powers which Sri Aurobindo had detailed in his book, The Mother: knowledge, strength, harmony, and perfection, and how to achieve the triple transformation, to begin with the psychic and widening ourselves by spiritual, and then opening ourselves to the supramental. All these things you have dealt, and whatever you have dealt, it has given us an inspiration to go deep into each one of these sutras, and we can work out a scheme of taking up in our satsang, so that we can take each one of these sutras and then we can go deep into them. Wonderful speech indeed, Srinivas ji. You have taken I know that you are a very busy person. You've taken your time off, and then you have really inspired all of us. I'm sure others also will share the same experience as what I'm feeling. Thank you very much. I also thank the participants who are very active and who post their questions. And thank you once again. Thank you very much. On behalf of Sri Aurobindo Society, I request you to participate again and again in our satsang and share your valuable thoughts and inputs. Thank you very much. This event will end with a prayer music.
Let us all try to be worthy of Sri Aurobindo's centenary.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.